General Hospital spoilers suggest that with Dr. Britt Westbourne on the verge of returning to Port Charles, Lulu Spencer will try to run her right back out of town. Lulu is a heroine on the ABC soap, but she's also shown to be someone who should not be trifled with. Simply ask Brooke Lynn Quartermaine Chase. Brooke Lynn sought to remain out of Lulu's way once she awoke from her coma, but Lulu was relentless in revealing the woman's pregnancy and adoption secrets. Lulu repeatedly pushed her nose where it didn't belong, revealing Giovanni Gio Palmieri's true paternity and causing the young man to realize his life was a lie. Gio abruptly discovered this at the 2025 Nurses' Ball and had a tantrum in front of the stunned audience. One could even argue that Lulu acted like a bully when it came to Brooke Lynn, manipulating her way into becoming a friend to Gio in order to spite her nemesis. GH teasers for the week of September 8th to 12th indicate that when Britt was at the Five Poppies Resort, Jason Morgan, Jocelyn Jacks, and Vaughn will rescue her and bring everyone back to Port Charles. During this week's preview video, Lulu appears to have seen a ghost. Lulu will be absolutely taken aback when she finds that her biggest nightmare, Britt, is still alive and has returned to town at the worst possible time. After all, Rocco Falconeri only recently discovered the truth about his birth story, and he has been eager to learn more about Britt. So much so that he contacted Liesl Albrecht for more information on his birth mother. Lulu has struggled with Rocco and Liesl's relationship, so imagine how difficult it will be to keep Britt away from her kid, which may be impossible at this point. Lulu is a smart schemer, so she'll try anything to get Britt out of town and away from her son. What Lulu doesn't comprehend is how much Britt has changed over time. For the most part, Port Charles has grown to appreciate and embrace the excellent doctor. Still, one person isn't a fan: Lulu's cousin, Carly Spencer. If Lulu learns about Britt and Jason's first breakup, as well as how he decided to marry Carly over pursuing a romance with the hospital's co-chief of staff, she may be able to successfully use Britt's vulnerabilities to convince her to leave Port Charles as quickly as she returned. The last thing Lulu wants is Britt staying in the small community, growing closer to Rocco, and undoing any progress she's made with her son. After all, Lulu has just recently returned to PC after spending 4 years away from her family and re-establishing relationships. General Hospital spoilers suggest that Lulu is not only determined to keep Britt away from Rocco, but she also has no limits when it comes to doing the right thing. So, whether she exploits Britt's anxieties or uses her career to undermine her life in Port Charles, Lulu will do everything she can to ensure Britt leaves town as soon as possible. CDL is the place to go for the latest General Hospital spoilers, updates, and news, so check back frequently for the most juicy GH intel. According to General Hospital spoilers, Jocelyn Jacks and Vaughn are in severe danger since Pascal has them captive at the Five Poppies Resort. Although Pascal has stated that he will not fake their deaths while they are still useful, this does not rule out the possibility that Jocelyn and Vaughn will go missing and be considered dead. Things are already sliding out of control, which may force Jack Brennan to confront Carly Spencer about Jocelyn's role in the WSB and the resulting failed mission. An explosion rocks Dalmatia. General Hospital spoilers suggest that an explosion could occur in Dalmatia, possibly to eliminate Jocelyn and Vaughn. Jason Morgan may not have been able to reach them in time, forcing Jason to notify Carly that Jocelyn is no longer with them. He had also just heard from Britt Westbourne that Jocelyn is a WSB agent, which made Jason believe that there were clues he had missed. Brennan would be shaken by the news, but confronting Carly would be even worse. Carly Spencer discovers the shocking truth about her daughter Jocelyn Jacks. Carly would receive a call from Jason informing her that he needed to see her right soon when he returned to Port Charles. Brennan is over himself after hearing the news about Jocelyn and Vaughn. Anna Devane would have also heard from Jason and urged Brennan to tell Carly the truth right away. It would be better if he heard it from him rather than Jason. Brennan visits Carly's house to see her, and she informs him that she just heard from Jason, and it sounded urgent. Brennan would gravely tell Carly how he recruited Jocelyn to the WSB, sent her to Dalmatia on a mission, and now she is assumed dead. Carly would lose it and slap Brennan. Carly Spencer vows revenge against Jack Brennan now that she learns everything about how Brennan lured her daughter into the WSB, resulting in Jocelyn's death. Carly vows to destroy Brennan. She would warn Brennan that he would face severe consequences for murdering her daughter. She would explain again that she could not bear losing another child, and she would resent him for costing her Jocelyn. She would inform Brennan that she will ensure retaliation for his actions. She will never let this go, and she regrets ever being with him. If she had realized that this would cost her daughter's life, she would have stayed away. Jason comes and consoles a distressed Carly, who orders Brennan to leave her sight. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Do you believe Jocelyn and Vaughn may be presumed dead in Dalmatia? Do you think Carly will be able to handle losing another child? Will Carly exact revenge on Brennan for costing her daughter? Keep watching General Hospital, which airs on ABC weekdays, to find out what happens next. Don't forget to come back here on a frequent basis for the most recent General Hospital news, information, and spoilers. In the bustling, drama-filled town of Port Charles, where secrets simmered under the surface and alliances fluctuated like the tides, Lulu Spencer found herself in the center of a storm she was desperate to calm. Lulu's ire was directed at Dr. Britt Westbourne, a woman whose presence in town had become a source of irritation for her. Britt, with her keen wit, crafty charm, and proclivity for causing trouble, had entangled herself in the lives of Port Charles's most influential inhabitants, including those closest to Lulu. What began as a personal grievance had evolved into a deliberate campaign, with Lulu determined to push Britt out of town permanently. The stakes were high, the emotions were raw, and the fallout from their conflict would affect everyone around them. Lulu's motivations were intensely personal, entwined in a complex web of devotion, treachery, and protection. Britt's entry in Port Charles had been far from discreet. She arrived at General Hospital with a reputation as a talented but brutal doctor, her past cloaked in mystery, and her intentions uncertain. Britt constituted a threat to the stability Lulu had worked so hard to preserve. Britt's flirtations with significant persons in Lulu's life, particularly her connections to Lulu's inner circle, came across as calculated provocation. Whether it was Britt's planned charm or her proclivity for being at the heart of every incident, Lulu couldn't shake the idea that she was a threat to her world's fragile balance. The final straw came when Britt's behaviors began to infringe on Lulu's family, jeopardizing the bonds she valued most. Lulu, never one to back down from a battle, felt it was time to take control of the situation. Lulu did not come up with the idea of running Britt out of Port Charles overnight. It was a slow fire, fueled by restless nights and hushed discussions with individuals she trusted. Lulu realized she couldn't approach Britt directly, the doctor was too intelligent and fast to turn the tables. Instead, Lulu used a more delicate method, revealing Britt's true nature and making her presence in Port Charles untenable. She started by gathering information, piecing together the details of Britt's history that had been meticulously hidden. Lulu's ties in town, her family, friends, and even a few reluctant allies, were vital. She contacted others who had crossed paths with Britt, ranging from hospital workers to previous acquaintances, with each discussion adding a new element to her portrayal of a manipulative lady. Lulu's first action was to weaken Britt's professional status at General Hospital. Britt's position as a doctor provided her with a facade of respectability, but Lulu believed there were fractures in that shell. She began by gently criticizing Britt's medical decisions, sowing seeds of mistrust among hospital workers. A missing file here, a whispered rumor there, Lulu was careful to keep her involvement hidden, so that no one could connect the rising disquiet back to her. She solicited the assistance of a few trusted nurses, who were eager to express their own concerns about Britt's approach. Stories about Britt's questionable ethics began to circulate, each one carefully accentuated by Lulu's subtle influence. The idea was not to completely destroy Britt, but to create an environment in which her every move was analyzed and her mistakes exaggerated. At the same time, Lulu attempted to expose Britt's personal connections. Britt had a talent for beguiling everyone around her, but Lulu was aware that charm frequently concealed hidden purposes. She began looking into Britt's relationships, particularly those that coincided with her own. Britt's proximity to some persons in Port Charles had always struck Lulu as deliberate, and she was determined to reveal the flaws in those relationships. She contacted common contacts, carefully underlining Britt's past of betrayal and deception. Lulu was careful to express her concerns as anxiety rather than accusation, so she could create suspicions without appearing malicious. Slowly but steadily, the individuals Britt relied on for support began to doubt her allegiance, their faith weakening beneath the weight of Lulu's well-prepared story. The emotional toll of this campaign was heavy on Lulu. She was not a naturally vengeful person, and the cunning required to outmaneuver Britt went against her nature. Late at night, as the adrenaline of her preparations faded, Lulu began to wonder if she was doing the right thing. Was she defending her loved ones, or was her fury clouding her judgment? The lines blurred, and the weight of her deeds weighed heavily on her. But every time she doubted, a new reminder of Britt's power, every whispered rumor, another calculated move, solidified her resolve. Lulu couldn't afford to let sentimentality stop her. There was too much at risk. As Lulu's campaign gained traction, Britt felt the pressure. The once confident doctor found herself on the defensive as her carefully crafted image began to fracture. Colleagues at the hospital began to separate themselves, their encounters fraught with suspicion. Friends she relied on got colder, and their conversations were shorter. Britt, who was no stranger to struggle, suspected that someone was plotting her ruin, but she couldn't determine the source. Her instincts informed her that Lulu was involved, but Lulu had been diligent, hiding her tracks with the accuracy of a skilled strategist. Britt's fury rose, as did her desperation to restore control. The tipping point occurred during a high-stakes argument at a charity dinner held at Metro Court. The gala was a spectacular affair attended by the Port Charles elite, including Lulu and Britt. Lulu had anticipated this moment, knowing that the public setting would heighten the effect of her next action. She had discovered some facts about Britt's past, a scandal that, while not directly related to Port Charles, would cast a pall over her image. During a toast, Lulu took advantage of the occasion to drop a carefully phrased clue regarding Britt's past, just broad enough to avoid open accusation but specific enough to pique interest. The room was filled with whispers as eyes went to Britt, whose composure had broken for the first time. Britt, taken off guard, attempted to deflect with her customary charm, but the damage had been done. The gala caused a transformation in the community's image of her. What had previously been murmurs turned into open supposition, and Britt felt increasingly isolated. Lulu, who was watching from the sidelines, felt both triumphant and uneasy. She intended to expose Britt in order to protect those she cared about, but the consequences were more complicated than she had expected. Relationships stretched, loyalties altered, and Port Charles became a battleground in their personal conflict. Britt's situation in Port Charles became increasingly insecure as the weeks passed. The escalating chorus of complaints forced the hospital board to begin an investigation into her activities. Her social circle dwindled, and even those who had previously supported her began to reconsider. Meanwhile, Lulu had her own set of obstacles. Her effort did not go unnoticed, and some in Port Charles began to doubt her tactics. Is she the protector she claims to be, or has she become obsessed? The murmurs about Lulu were quieter and less violent, but they still stung. She had set out to save her loved ones, but the cost of her victory was becoming more apparent. The pinnacle of their rivalry occurred unexpectedly, in a quiet moment that neither woman had expected. Britt, cornered and desperate, faced Lulu immediately. The confrontation was visceral, unfiltered, and carried the weight of their mutual animosity. Britt accused Lulu of engineering her collapse and destroying her life out of jealousy and vengeance. Lulu, for her part, did not dispute her conduct but remained steadfast in her reasoning. She saw Britt as a menace, a disruptor who belonged nowhere near Port Charles's fragile ecosystem. Although the confrontation did not result in a resolution, it did signal a watershed moment. Britt, realizing she could no longer save her place in town, began to make plans to depart. In the aftermath, Lulu struggled with the ramifications of her actions. Britt's departure was a win, but it had a cost. Relationships had been stretched, trust had been destroyed, and Lulu found herself considering whether the ends warranted the means. Port Charles, ever resilient, moved on, but the scars from their feud remained. Lulu's drive had safeguarded people she cared about, but it had also revealed a part of herself she hadn't completely acknowledged, a side willing to go to extreme measures to succeed. The narrative of Lulu and Britt demonstrated the complexity of devotion and competitiveness in a town where no secret remained hidden for long. It served as a reminder that even the finest intentions can have unexpected effects, and that triumph is rarely free. Lulu's struggle was over, but her internal war had only just begun. As Port Charles returned to its usual cadence, the echoes of their battle served as a warning. In a town like this, every action had repercussions, and no one escaped untouched. Carly sat on the couch in her dimly lit living room, her entire body shivering as if she was holding herself together with sheer willpower. The silence in the home was terrible, interrupted only by the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel. Every second that went without hearing anything about Jocelyn felt like an eternity, and with each passing minute, the knot in her stomach increased. Carly's mind replayed the past 24 hours like a torturous reel, the frantic phone call, the disappearance, the authorities' grim expressions, and finally, the unbearable words, "She's missing, Carly, and she might not have survived." Carly couldn't breathe when she first heard it. Her daughter. Her baby. Jocelyn was gone. She felt the same maelstrom of anguish, guilt, and wrath whirl wildly inside her chest, threatening to engulf her completely. But, behind the crushing weight of it all, one idea shone brighter than the others: Brennan. She had advised Jocelyn to keep away from him. She had warned everyone in her orbit that he was dangerous and not who he claimed to be, but no one had listened, and now her worst fears had come true. She stood abruptly and paced the length of the living room, her motions quick and restless. If he touched her, if he even looked at her, she hissed beneath her breath, hot with wrath. "He's going to pay for it. I vow on everything I have, Brennan will not get away with it." Jason had tried to calm her down earlier, his voice steady as he told her they needed to wait for police updates, but Carly couldn't and wouldn't remain inactive while her daughter's life was in danger. Every second lost meant another second Jocelyn could be in danger, and Carly knew Brennan too well to believe he would stop at kidnapping. She'd seen men like him before, manipulative, calculated, and merciless. If he felt hurting Carly through Jocelyn would give him an advantage, he would do it without hesitation. The door creaked open, and Sonny stepped inside, his face marked with tiredness and a rare vulnerability. Carly immediately turned to face him, hoping to see some optimism in his expression, but his silence told it all. "Tell me you found something," she pleaded, her voice shaking despite her efforts to sound confident. Sonny paused, running his fingers over his jaw, before speaking. "They found her car near the docks," Carly exclaimed, catching her breath. "And? Was there no evidence of her?" Sonny's voice was thick and cautious, as if he was attempting to soften the pain. "But there was blood, Carly." Her legs buckled before she knew what was going on, and Sonny lunged forward to keep her from falling to the floor. Her chest heaved as she tried to digest his words, but all she could hear was a roar in her ears that drowned out both reason and hope. "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "No, you do not understand. Jocelyn is strong. She is a fighter. She is out there, Sonny. She must be." Sonny's jaw hardened, but he did not dispute. He understood better than anybody what it meant when Carly was like this, unwavering, unbreakable, and driven by a determination that made her dangerous even to the most merciless of enemies. "Brennan did this," she finally stated, her voice low and cutting as a sword. "He took her from me. And I'm not going to sit around and let him get away with it. Carly, we have no idea if it was him." She snapped, whirling on her heel and facing Sonny. Don't stand there and say you don't trust me. You've met him before, Sonny. You know what he is capable of. I warned everyone, and now my daughter is gone. Sonny did not deny it. He had his own concerns about Brennan, but without proof, his options were limited in ways that Carly's were not. Jason reappeared, his demeanor bleak. We have a lead, he added quietly, taking out his phone and showing them security footage from a camera near the docks. Carly came closer, her pulse hammering as she spotted Jocelyn on the screen and walked fast into the lake, phone held to her ear. A man's shadow came behind her, vague but undeniably deliberate. Moments thereafter, the video cut out. That's him, Carly muttered, her fists clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. That's Brennan. Jason nodded slowly. It is doable. But, Carly, if you go after him without backup, I'm not waiting for backup, she said forcefully. Every second we waste is another second she could be, her voice cracked, but she suppressed the emotion, swallowing it like poison. Jason, I'm finding her. With or without your assistance. Jason exchanged a gaze with Sonny, and in that quiet exchange was the weight of years of history, numerous battles, and a profound understanding that when Carly set her mind to something, nothing could stop her. Jason finally sighed and tucked his phone back into his pocket. Then I'm coming with you. The following few hours blurred together, with phone calls, whispered strategies, and uncomfortable silences punctuated by spurts of urgency. Carly followed Jason and Sonny into the darkness, her senses sharpened and her body tingling with adrenaline. She had one and only one goal, to find Jocelyn and make Brennan pay. By the time they arrived at the safe house where Brennan was said to be hiding, the air was thick with anxiety. Jason indicated for stillness and moved with experienced accuracy as they neared the shadowy building. Carly remained behind him, her breathing shallow but steady, and every muscle in her body tense and ready. Suddenly, a faint but clear sound came from within. A hushed cry. Carly froze, her heart racing in her throat. That's her, she said softly, her voice breaking. Jason's hand gently clamped around her arm, preventing her from charging in headlong, but it was too late, Brennan had heard them. The door flung forcefully open, and he walked inside, his sneer cold and cruel. Are you looking for your daughter, Carly? He drawled, his tone low and sarcastic. Carly's rage erupted instantaneously, erasing all traces of dread. Where is she? She demanded, her voice as cutting as steel. Brennan angled his head, examining her like a hunter assessing his prey. Jason raised his gun and maintained a firm stance, saying, safe for now. You are done, Brennan. This ends tonight. Brennan laughed slowly and deliberately, as if savoring the situation. Do you honestly believe you can influence how this ends? She's mine until I decide otherwise. Carly's wrath at those words was visceral and overpowering. She surged forward before anybody could stop her, thrusting past Jason and smashing into Brennan with all of the strength her sadness and rage had given her. They collided against the wall, leaving Brennan shocked by the ferocity of her strike. In the turmoil that ensued, Jason acted immediately, disarming Brennan and forcing him to the ground. Sonny stormed into the room behind them, his face furious as he pushed Brennan's firearm out of reach. Then Carly heard it, a tiny whimper from somewhere deep inside the home. She dashed toward the sound, smashing open doors until she saw Jocelyn chained to a chair in a dismal, windowless room. Her daughter's tear-streaked face swung up toward her, eyes wide and afraid, and Carly nearly collapsed from relief. Mom! Jocelyn's voice cracked as Carly went to her knees and drew her into her arms. I thought I'd never see you again. Never, Carly said firmly, kissing the top of her head. No one will ever take you away from me. Back in the hallway, Jason and Sonny carried Brennan out in handcuffs, his face bloodied but still twisted in defiance. Carly followed them out, clutching Jocelyn close to her side, but even as the cops arrived to take Brennan away, Carly knew it wasn't over. It wasn't only about saving her daughter anymore. This was wartime. Brennan had crossed a line, and Carly planned to make him regret it for the rest of his life. She would deconstruct him piece by piece, removing everything he treasured and ensuring he never had the ability to harm anybody she loved again. As she hugged Jocelyn close, Carly made a quiet pledge to herself: Brennan's collapse would not be quick or tidy. It would be ruthless, calculating, and uncompromising. Because no one snatches Carly Corinthos' child and leaves unscathed. Carly sat awake long after everyone else had gone to bed, unable to rest her eyes without seeing Jocelyn's horrified expression, the ropes around her wrists, and the way she shuddered whenever Carly touched her. The sight imprinted itself on her memory, driving the never-ending maelstrom of emotions raging through her chest. Relief that her daughter was still alive was accompanied by intense regret, shame for not stopping this sooner, guilt for not protecting her, and guilt for allowing Brennan to come near enough to harm her family. But beneath the grief and tiredness, one emotion burned brighter than the others: wrath. Brennan may have been in captivity, but Carly knew him better than most. Men like him didn't give up lightly, and they didn't quit simply because they were locked up. Brennan was not some frantic amateur who made a stupid judgment. He was calculating, patient, and dangerous. And Carly couldn't get over the awful feeling that he wasn't working alone. She poured herself a glass of water, which she did not drink, and stared out the window into the black Port Charles night. The city seemed tranquil, but she sensed danger lying beneath the surface, just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. Her chest tightened as her protective instincts told her she needed to keep ahead of Brennan this time. No more warnings. No more hesitating. She heard a quiet creak down the hall and turned abruptly, her body taut, to see Jocelyn standing in the doorway. Her daughter's face was pallid, her eyes sunken, and Carly's heart shattered yet again. "I couldn't sleep either," Carly inquired softly, setting down the drink and approaching her. Jocelyn shook her head, her arms tightly wrapped across her chest, as if she were holding herself together. "I keep hearing his voice," she said softly, hardly audible. "Every time I close my eyes, it's like I'm back in that room." Carly drew her into a furious embrace, squeezing her as closely as she could. "He cannot hurt you anymore, sweetie. I promise you that." Jocelyn trembled against her, remaining silent for a long moment before whispering, "I thought I was going to die, Mom. I thought I'd never see you again." Carly embraced her tighter and closed her eyes against the tears that threatened to spill. "Joss, I will not let anyone steal you from me. I swear it." But even as she said it, Carly understood that promises were insufficient. Brennan had already crossed an awful line, and if she didn't intervene, he'd do it again, maybe not to Jocelyn, maybe not even to Carly, but someone she cared about would suffer the consequences. By the morning, she had made her decision. Jason arrived at her place before daylight, unsurprised to see Carly already pacing. "I know that look," he remarked, leaning against the doorway and crossing his arms. "You're about to do something reckless." "This isn't reckless," she replied, pausing to face him. "This is survival." Jason's countenance remained unchanged, but his silence was sufficient response. Carly sighed and dropped her voice. "You and I both know Brennan is far from finished. He's not the sort to accept defeat and depart quietly. He'll come after me again, and this time he won't only target Jocelyn. He will target everyone I care about. Michael, Donna, Avery, maybe even Sunny." Jason took a moment to look her over before stepping forward. "So, what are your plans?" Carly's jaw stiffened. "I want to find out what Brennan is hiding. He buried every contact, business agreement, and nasty little secret. I want to rip his entire existence apart before he even has the opportunity to breathe outside of a cell." Jason paused. If Brennan has connections inside the department, and you know he probably does, this could put you in even more danger. Carly's lips curled into a humorless smirk. Then let him come. I want him to know that I am not afraid of him. Jason did not protest more, but his silence spoke volumes. He'd been here before, too many times to count, standing between Carly and the insanity she seemed to gravitate towards like gravity. Nonetheless, he understood better than anyone that attempting to stop her was pointless. Carly Corinthos did not back down. Not ever. Later that afternoon, Carly met with Spinelli, who had already begun looking into Brennan's background. When he presented his findings, her stomach churned. Offshore accounts, dummy corporations, and encrypted messages, Brennan's web was larger than anyone imagined. He was more than simply a dangerous man on the run. He was a part of something larger, something that went deep into Port Charles and beyond. Carly, Spinelli cautioned carefully, tapping the screen, if we go too quickly, we may tip him off. And if Brennan has allies, I don't care, she interrupted, her tone cutting but steady. I want everything on him. Everyone he's ever worked with, every transaction, every deception. Find it. When she got home, Jocelyn was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV without really watching it. Carly sat alongside her and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. We're going to get through this, Carly replied softly. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but we will. Jocelyn paused before voicing the question that had plainly been bothering her. What if he makes it out? What if he returns? Carly's throat clenched, but she pushed her voice to be steady. Then I'll make sure he never gets the chance to hurt you again. Later that night, she stood in her bedroom, staring at the framed picture of her family on the dresser. Her fingers lay softly against the glass, and her reflection blended with the grins in the photograph. She remembered every fight she'd had, every loss she'd suffered, every time someone she cared about had been snatched away from her, and how, each time, she'd clawed her way back stronger than before. Brennan believed he could use Jocelyn to break her. Instead, he'd reawakened a version of Carly that hadn't been in years, the one who didn't wait for justice to arrive at her door. The person who took it. By the end of the week, Jason had located one of Brennan's suspected associates, a man with close ties to a private network of organized crime.